All right, we're here with Jesus Ramirez, who's going to talk about his classes for the upcoming Photoshop Virtual Summit 4. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. How's it going?
Sure. Oh, excellent. Lots of work still to do, but we're almost there.
Almost there.
So, you one of the classes that you're doing is tips and tricks that you may or may not know. So, obviously, everyone loves Photoshop tips. What kind of things will you be talking about in your class?
Good tips, I hope. I'm going to be talking about the class is going to start out with the Scripts Event Manager, which to me is one of the most underutilized tools in Photoshop. It's a tool that allows you to apply either a script or an action to an event in Photoshop. So whenever you start Photoshop, something happens, or whenever you apply a filter like the Gaussian blur filter, which is the example that I'm going to use in the class, then something happens automatically. So how people can take advantage of this really, really powerful tool that a lot of people don't even know it's there. So that's how we're going to start the class. And we're going to move on to talking about Blend If, which is my favorite tool for blending and masking layers together. We're going to talk about the clone stamp tool and the different keyboard shortcuts that people may not know are there to work faster with the tool. We're going to talk about some of the neural filters and how to better utilize them. And I think it's going to be a fun class.
It sounds like it. And I know there's Blend If is one of those things where I think in every summit it's come up in at least 2 or 3 classes, but that's because it is so powerful, and yet a lot of people either don't know about it or don't really fully understand the capabilities of what it can do.
Right.
So what kind of what kind of example would you show when you're doing a tip on Blend If? What kind of stuff?
Well, it's going to be one of the longer segments of my class, and I'm actually going to talk about how it works behind the scenes. I think that in order for you to properly understand how this tool can help the person watching and their workflow is to understand how it works, rather than me say, drag this slider and then this will happen. I go deeper into how it works, and then I show examples showing those specific things. We'll talk about how it works with the individual channels. We'll talk about how they can help you create, people watching may be photographers. So I have some photography examples, some masking examples. I also have some design examples to show how to apply textures and things like that to text. Nice. So a little bit of everything for everyone. So I hope everyone gets to find something in there that they enjoy.
Sure. One of the my favorite things about these summit classes, and I mentioned it with, I can't remember who else I was talking about this, is that because the classes it's not like a 10-minute tutorial, it means you can dive a little deeper in to be under the hood, not just say, move the slider to 138 and, like sort of a formula. It's more, here's why this is working, or here's how it works. I think that's so valuable for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. That's how I like to teach Blend If, just because I feel that if, as you said, you just tell someone to drag a slider, people may not necessarily know why, but if we're looking at the channels panel at the same time as we're dragging a slider, and, I think it'll help people understand what's really happening, and hopefully it'll make a light bulb go off and say, oh, I can use Blend If for this particular task in my workflow, which is really the goal of my session, to show people what Photoshop can do, but hopefully spark an idea of how it can help them in their workflow, because they may never use the tool the way that I use it.
Right, exactly. Awesome. Now, the other class that you're doing is on compositing, and one of the things that I know you've done classes like this before on the summits, and one of the things I really enjoy is that you don't just talk about the sort of, here's how you make a mask, but kind of almost like the theory behind it, right?
Yeah, so the reason that I got into Photoshop was because I was really into drawing comic books. I'm a big Spider-Man fan to this day, so I used to draw Spider-Man all the time, and I was really big into drawing, perspective drawing, and all that sort of stuff. So when I started using Photoshop and started compositing, I realized that a lot of those principles translate over at the end of the day. Drawing and Photoshop is a 2D medium. We're trying to create the illusion of depth and perspective in a flat surface. I know Photoshop has 3D, or at least it used to have. I think Adobe is taking that out. But the point is that at the end of the day, you're producing an image, a photo, a two-dimensional output. So a lot of those techniques that I learned in traditional art translate well into Photoshop. And as you mentioned, that's how I like to teach it. Also, I haven't talked about it publicly too much recently, but one of the other instructors here at the Photoshop Summit is Lisa Carney, who works in the Hollywood industry, designing film and movie TV posters. And I recently started working with her on several projects, and I started working with some of the clients that she works with. So recently, I've been working with projects with HBO and Netflix on these high-end composites. So compositing is really in my head at the moment. So it's
Nice.
It's something that I hope passion I can hope that I can bring to people watching, and they can see some of these tips and techniques that I've used on high-end projects, not just for funsies.
Sure. So is this class for people who've never done compositing? If it's someone just starting out,
Yes.
they'll know where to start.
100%. I have a little bit in there for everyone. So even if you do have some experience with compositing, there's some tips that might help you as well. But I do start from the beginning on this particular session. I start with how I like to start my masking process. I usually use the selected mask workspace, but as I've seen other people do, I actually like to do 2 steps rather than 1. I see most people just doing 1 step in the selected mask workspace, and I show my 2-step process because since the selected mask workspace applies a global refinement to the edges of a subject, that's not always the best result because like the edges on my sweater are very different than the edges on my hair. So I like to show people this 2-step process. We move on to color matching. There's a new tool in Photoshop 2022, the neural filter that color matches. But what some people may not know is that it works differently depending on where you place your subject up against the background. So we talk about that and how you can blend the different results it gives you. So yeah, a whole lot of different things. So if you're starting out, you'll definitely learn a lot. And if you're a little more advanced, there's still something in there for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that, like I said, that's one of the great benefits of the longer class is also that to be able to cover, a range, not just say this is just for beginners or this is just for people with experience. So, well, both of those classes, I got to say, as always, sound really awesome. I said this a couple of times in these interviews is that I can't wait to watch the classes myself because it's always one of my favorite things about any event like this where there's multiple instructors is even if there's a little bit of overlap in the classes to see different people's takes, like on how they make selections or how they're working with masks or channels or whatever it is. That's one of the greatest things I think about this type of thing is to be able to see different people and how they approach things.
Yeah, and I mean, I like watching the other sessions as well because I get to learn from some of my fellow instructors. I just mentioned Lisa Carney, and actually in my compositing session, there's a point where I talk about the minimum and maximum filter to adjust the edges of a mask. And actually, I learned that from Lisa. And I mention it in the class. And I said, I had no idea that you could do that. And I saw her do it a few years back. And as I was teaching it, I said, by the way, check out Lisa's session. I know she's an instructor, and this is where I learned that from.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Well, like I said, I can't wait to see your classes. And I thank you for taking the time to give us a little bit of an insight as to what you'll be teaching.
Of course. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoys Photoshop Summit number 4 now. Incredible, right? Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jesus.